Well, former British Army intelligence and security officer Philip Ingram is here to give us his analysis. Why don't we start, Philip, with this Wagner Group convoy that's heading from Rostov-on-Don all the way up this motorway here to Moscow. They're making progress.
Well, they are, and progress on day 486 of Vladimir Putin's 10-day special military operation. It took them 18 months to get 7 kilometres in Bakhmut. They've now done 350 kilometres in a day. But they are making significant progress up the M4. And that is a direct link from Rostov up into Moscow. And there's unconfirmed reports at the moment that the Wagner Convoy has gone north of Voronezh and is about 4 hours to 6 hours driving time away from Moscow itself, and indications that Moscow's increasing the defences around the roads that lead into it.
Incredible, isn't it? So they are meeting resistance.
They have met some resistance en route. We've seen some pictures of the helicopter that had to try and avoid an anti-aircraft missile, and that was almost certainly fired by the Wagner troops. I've seen pictures of the Wagner convoy being vehicles on it being blown up. So it's clear that the Russian military and the Russian army air capability and air force are attacking elements of this convoy. That's all they've really got at the moment. But we've got Russian on Russian.
Yeah. Tell us about Rostov as well, because they're claiming to have taken key military command centres there. They don't seem to have met any resistance, certainly from the Russian army. What about the public there as well? What's the sense they're getting from them?
Well, I've seen pictures of the public giving the Wagner troops bottles of water and leaving food by them and all the rest of it. Again, there have been pictures showing Prigozhin supporters fighting in the streets, civilians fighting with anti-Prigozhin individuals that are there in little spats that are building up. So there's clearly tension building. But as we saw in the picture just before this, Prigozhin was sitting down there with the deputy commander of the GRU, the Russian first first directorate, their military intelligence, and with the commander of the Southern Command. They don't seem to be in an aggressive stance at all, having negotiation. That Southern Command headquarters controls all of the operations into Ukraine, and therefore from a military perspective it's very important, but from a political perspective, especially with the pressure being put on the Russian Defence Minister Shoigu and on the overall commander General Gerasimov, that is significant, very significant.
Yeah, I mean, is there a sense that perhaps those two men could meet with Wagner Group representatives? Is that something that could happen by the end of the day?
Well, Prigozhin's been asking for that. That's what he's saying. He's saying, I'm marching on Moscow because I want a meeting with...
his beef is with them rather than with Putin.
Exactly. And he's been very careful in the language that he's put out not to openly criticise Putin. Certainly in the initial messages that he was putting out there. There have been subsequent messages, and again, I'm trying to confirm that these have actually come from him, where he has called for Putin to be toppled. That's then crossed the Rubicon. And we're then into the coup stakes. But it's a fast-moving, very dynamic environment, but it's being made more complex because there's an awful lot of disinformation being put out around it at the moment. So we have to be very careful about latching on to reports that say this or reports that say that, and take them with a bit of a pinch of salt until we can get them confirmed.
Yeah, good advice. And let's talk about Ukraine as well, because is there a tactical advantage in the short term in Ukraine, exploiting, if you like, this vacuum?
I think the Ukrainians are doing the right thing, and to use their own words, they're running out of popcorn because they're sitting back and watching it, and that's exactly the right thing to do. Watch what's happening at the moment, because there isn't an immediate tactical advantage. The Russians that are on the front line in the positions defending against the Ukrainian counterattacks still have their minefields, still have their anti-tank traps, still have their anti-tank weapons. Their artillery is still firing in. They're focused on keeping themselves alive. And doing that, they're keeping the Ukrainians back. What the Ukrainians could be doing is making life harder for them by continuing to attack their logistics sites, their command and control sites behind the lines, so that at some stage the Russians in the front line are going to run short of or run out of ammunition. And the Ukrainian counterattacks are going in and still probing in north of Bakhmut, south of Donetsk, and from Zaporizhia down to towards Tomak, looking for opportunities. If the Russians in the front line start to run out of ammunition, that's when the Russian soldiers are going to go, we can't defend this and we have to get out.
Well, I was going to ask you about that, because morale amongst Russian soldiers has been pretty low. Are they now sort of thinking, watching all this, weighing up their options?
The Russian soldier hasn't got the authority in the front line to think like that, and therefore they don't. They do what they're told. Right. Whenever they run out of ammunition, that's when it'll cause them a real dilemma, because they'll go, I haven't been told to leave, I've been told to stay, but they'll want to leave because they've got no wherewithal to defend themselves. It's not a tactical opportunity for Ukraine at the moment. It will be in the coming days if Ukraine can exploit the operational advantage and destroy some more command and control logistic hubs and all the rest in Russia's rear areas.
Yeah, fascinating. I know you're speaking to your contacts behind the scenes. We'll let you go away and do that. We'll speak to you again a little bit later.